Oh yeah, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy Saturday, everybody. We are here going live. Yes, we are. We're doing another episode of the mini-series of the Fourfold Formula, which is a book, a multi-author book. I know you know. I mean, I've run my mouth for 9 months. If you delete, block, I'm sure you're sick of me by now. But I'm doing this because the other 39 freaking amazing people I'm doing it with need a shout out, and they're the bomb. And I got another one here today in the green room eating M&Ms, as you know, because that's what I provide in the back room. We're going to talk about her story. Alicia Lyons is here. And I always call her Alicia because she has an S in there. It's really cool. So she's going to come in and she's going to talk about her story. And this book, if you go out and get it on Amazon, amazon.com, the Fourfold Formula with a little dash in there, send me your invoice or your receipt, email peggy@allthingswellness.com. I'm going to give you a free one. Buy one, give one. So you might want to keep the autograph one. I mean, who really cares? Doesn't matter if it's autographed. Who cares? But give it to someone. Okay, let's bring Alicia in. See what the hell's going on with her. See what she's drinking out of her mug today. Hey, game and share girl, what up? Bad bitches in the house. That's awesome. Oh my gosh, you look like $1 million today. You really do.
It's 7 a.m. my time. I've been up since 6.
You get up early like I do. I get up really early.
Yeah.
I get mad if I'm not up like before civilization and sitting outside. Like that's how I kind of process, and I'm kind of creative at that time. So I understand. I know when I was throwing out times to do these episodes, you guys, and sometimes I forget to tell everybody that I give my time Eastern Standard Time, because if you've coached and you do anything internationally, like I'm not going to keep up with time zones. Like your time is 10. Because why? Because I suck. So when I said, Alicia's like, I'll take Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And I'm like, oh, hey, do you know that's Eastern a.m.? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, sweet girl. So,
yeah.
Hi.
You know, I lived on the East Coast for 2 or 3 years. So my brain automatically calculates like, okay, 10 Eastern, 7 a.m. East, 7 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah.
And it's, I can't do any other time zones that way. But Eastern, I got it.
With the UK, because they do their time zone changes differently, it's like a week apart or something. And I've got a couple clients there and a couple people that were in this book there. Are we 5 hours? Are we 6 hours? Are we whatever? Right. And then Germany, you're like, how many? I can't even. So, So thank you for joining to talk about your story. You're full of stories.
Full of stories. I've been writing since I could put sentences together. So that's I think in stories, I think in drama.
That brings up a really good point, though, unrehearsed and unscripted here. When you were little and you were writing, was there a certain genre that were you just getting your words down? Like, what were you writing about?
I always wrote about what I was obsessed with. And so when I was 10, I wrote about horses. When I was in middle school, I wrote about boys.
No.
When I was in high school, I wrote about NSYNC. So I wrote NSYNC.
I love that. Oh, I love that.
I used to be embarrassed, but I'm like, nope, that's a pride. I'm proud of that. Like that's a point of pride for me.
It's so funny. I have a Mrs. Timberlake shirt. And it shows it gives us away, kind of, doesn't it? And my kids, I kept it all these years. And it still to this day sends chills and gross vibes down my sons. They're like, oh yeah. But it was just this cute. I mean, and it's this big because that's about how big back in the day I was. It was like a shrunk over the years. All right. So then you become a teenager and you did the boys thing. Did you feel like you were going to be an author or write for the public ever? Was that kind of your gig?
Honestly, that was all I really ever wanted. Like with the exception of wanting to, when they ask you like, what'd you want to be when you grew up? Mm-hmm. My answer was never the profession. I always wanted to be the person. So I wanted to be Amy Grant. So I wanted to be a singer when I was 4 years old. But after that, I was always told, stop singing. So nobody ever told me stop writing. So like I wanted to be a writer. I am obsessed with books. I have way too many and a lot that I haven't read because I am more of a writer than a reader. But I'm a collector of authors. So like Anne Rice and Stephen King and J.K. Rowling. Like I've read all of the Vampire Chronicles, all of the Harry Potter books, and so I wrote one of the books I wrote when I was 16. I published when I was 26, and I changed the characters. So it was originally NSYNC fan fiction, but I kind of rewrote it and made it a romance. And it was actually like a young adult romance, but no, it was a new adult romance, but new adults didn't exist at that time. So I had published it as a romance. Okay. And I wasn't instantly J.K. Rowling. And so I stopped writing for 12 years because of my shame of not fulfilling that dream, the unrealistic dream of here, I'm going to post it on the internet and now I'm J.K. Rowling, because that's how she did it, right?
After she wrote for 30 years, though.
Right.
You know, hello, we forget that fact.
She was a starving single mom for a long time. And I didn't even know that at the time. But, you know, hindsight's 2020. I basically stopped writing because it was like, well, if I can't, and there were some issues with copyright, with the what's the word? They owned my characters. The publishing company that I published with owned my characters, and that book was a trilogy. And so I made the decision at the ripe old age of 28 that if I can't publish my other 2 books, what's the point of writing? The point is that I love it. Right. That's the point.
Right.
But it took me 12 years to get to that answer.
You bring up 2 really amazing points here. First of all, wanting to be the character. Like this is a groundbreaking. You know, you have those ahas. You die for your client to have that aha, because I always know when I see the whites of their eyes, like, whoa, they just got it. Like now it's a party of 2, not just a party of 1. And so I just had an aha moment when you said, because as we're growing up, we pick the characters. We pick fireman and policeman, and we pick J-Lo, and we pick, you know, the leading actress in Young and the Restless. Whoever it is we pick, but we don't ever, and we're, oh, Jesus, we don't
I'm laughing because I still watch the show.
Okay. All right, we may need counseling after this, where we can't get out of our own genre. But what I was just thinking is nobody comes back and says, let's talk about the struggles of which to be that before they became that. Or what's a struggle to be a fireman and how it affects your family, or what the struggles are when JK took, 30 years of writing and was feeding her kid, bread and butter. We never think about that. So you bring up an amazing point and you say, hey, if I didn't hit the ticket right out of the bat, she must have. Like, I'm a loser. I'm done. And I really want to encourage anybody out there. I don't care what you want to be, whether it's a writer or not. Like, it's not an easy journey. And if you write a book and you think it sells itself, the work starts when you sign the dotted line to the publisher, and the rest does not just happen. So, and the other thing that you brought up, a couple of things. When you go into a publishing relationship, read the agreement. I have interviewed so many freaking authors who lost they had to buy. I met with an author like last year or the year before who was about 70 years old, and she was from another country, and she was in the process of buying back her own book because she had you sign that and you're like, oh, that sounds so good, and you're going to market and edit and you're going to do all this stuff for me and get me out there, and you know what you're doing. And then they own, like you said, the characters or the whatever. So for anybody writing out there, even blogs, sometimes you don't own your own blogs. Yeah. And so anyways, figure out what you want to do. Don't give it away.
Now that you have a book, Peggy, like it's the equivalent of a child. Like there's very little difference between the love that you have for a book and the love that you have for a child. Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously there's a huge difference, but the amount of work that goes into both is very similar. And so somebody else owning your child is just, it's devastating. And luckily that publishing company wasn't very good at business, and they've since folded, and therefore I have my rights back. So I will be republishing that book and the subsequent other two soonish.
That's super cool.
I've consulted multiple lawyers over the years about how to get my rights back, because they're my babies. And it was,
Exactly.
I've struggled a lot getting back into writing fiction. Writing nonfiction was a totally different genre, obviously, but it was a different experience. And I wanted writing fiction to feel like it used to when I was 16.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, my brain's changed since I was 16.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
priorities have changed since I was 16. And so I've been on this journey of remembering, like, or rediscovering what it's like to be a fiction writer, as I've been, continuing to write nonfiction.
And balancing genres is a really good point, because just because you pick one profession and you pick a lane to start out with doesn't mean that, if you fall out of love with that lane, you can always bounce into something else and fall in love, or be in multiple lanes, just like you are. As an established author, and I knew that when I first met you, that you had written a book, and you did it very young. You were accomplished. You went through that process really young. Doing it with 40 people. And a couple of things is, yes, it's a baby. So anybody out there who's writing, and it doesn't matter, honestly, if it's a blog or a journal entry, it is your baby. And especially if you're writing it about your personal special life, your own life, and you're being transparent. It may not be the view, we've talked about this a million times, that everyone else in the family of the same exact event and date has the same image or the same feelings or whatever, and you have a right to tell your story. But the baby of it, now we have in this compilation, which is a different experience than writing a book by yourself. Because now you have the experience of getting to know other people and their stories, and like, maybe, wow, I'm like-minded, and your story is like, looking and appearing and being the similarities and traits of our parents. You write that with other people, and you start to have these sidebar conversations of like, whoa, you kind of felt that way too. So the connections, did you find a difference in that experience of those two babies for you?
Yeah, I'm in the process of reading our book.
The
it's
1.4 pound baby, isn't it? It's
right. I was shocked at how big it is. I was like, oh, it's not going to fit on my shelf like my other 10 copies do of my
Clean
book.
it out.
Yeah, it's a different experience, because, I knew the gist of the book, but I didn't know what the book was about. And so as I'm reading it, I'm like, ooh, I'm really resonating with everything that was in the foreword, and that's in the what's the preface. And yeah, that's as far as I've gotten.
Hey, just.
But it's funny, because my son learned a very important lesson this week. So he's had this book for 3 weeks to read, and in order to earn Fun Friday, he had to be finished with the book by yesterday. And he, on Thursday morning, he was halfway through this 400-page book.
Shut up. And he's only like 10. How old is he?
He's 10 years old. He was probably on page 200 when he left the house on Thursday morning. He came home and he was on page 300. I was like, whoa. Well, if you did that much in one day, you could do more, right? He finished the book. He finished it. I was shocked. Like, I was preparing him for the failure of not finishing the book in time and missing the party. And but he was determined. And so after the fact, I'm like, hey, remember, the next time that you think that you can't do something hard, you have to remember Percy Jackson, because that was a huge accomplishment in 2 days.
Isn't it, imagine what we want, we make time for. Like, seriously.
If it's important, if it's important to us, like I used to write until 3 in the morning when I was 16. I'm not doing that and then go to school, right?
Right.
I'm not doing that now.
Yeah.
At 40.
Right. Hello.
Yeah.
So in the book, your story, I mean, it's a touchy, it's a, not a touchy, well, it is a touchy subject, right? And I'm going through a similar experience, and I didn't really recognize I was going through it until I read your story, to be honest. And it, you know how you have traits that you're similar to your parents, and then you're like, yeah, that's my mom and dad, you guys, like, because it's a positive, like, that's a cool trait, dedicated, hardworking, like, kids love them. And then there are certain traits that you don't want to associate with, and maybe even in the personality. And so you start to pick apart things. Like, it can be looks, it can be behaviors, it can be whatever. So talk to me about those traits that you compared yourself up against your dad, because it was your father, and you shared the story.
Yeah, my relationship with my dad was very complicated in my own mind. It probably wasn't complicated to him.
Oh, good. That's so good. It's so good.
You know, one way that I like my dad that I didn't mention in the book, because it's come up since, is that we both looked at our parents and said, I don't want to be like that. And so we did different things. He did the opposite of his dad, which his dad was very authoritarian and controlling. And so my dad's approach was very hands-off. And the problem with the complete opposite is that the hands-off approach feels like he didn't care.
Right.
It created a distance.
Right.
And I genuinely believe, because I've been going through the memories of,
because he just passed away when you started working with us on this book. Yeah.
The day that I talked to you, he passed away.
I know.
Which was so interesting. I had a dream that my stepmom told me that he passed, but it turned out that he was sleeping. And in reality, in real life, my dad, the pastor who passed away on Good Friday, which couldn't have been more poetic, right? I got a text at 2 a.m. that I interpreted as my dad passed away at 2 a.m. And he didn't pass away until 1 p.m. So until like 11 o'clock, from 6 a.m. when I saw the text to 11 a.m, I thought he had passed. And it was an interesting experience. Like, it wasn't this up and down like I thought, like you would think that it would be. It was like, I really got to check in with, okay, how do I feel about him passing? Okay, I am at peace with it. Oh, he's not gone? Oh, okay.
That's so I mean,
yeah,
it's like you're starting to process the emotions. Then you're like, no, it's like,
just kidding.
Psych, bad April Fool's joke. Jesus,
right, for sure. So the way that my grandpa would yell at my dad, like, they got into dinner was just a battle royale in their family. And I never knew this growing up. I never knew this really until after he passed away, because nobody was talking about it. And I think that's one of the worst things that happens in our society, is that we don't talk about those kinds of things. And, you know, so I remember being 4 years old and him not yelling, but he was stern with me about something, about a mistake that I'd made, or his perceived mistake.
Yeah.
And then I remember learning to ride a bike, whatever age that was, I'm going to say 8. And again, making a mistake and then, you know, feeling the brunt of his disappointment. And that's the last time that I would say that I remember my dad yelling at me. And I think that there was a switch that happened. So at his funeral, everyone talked about the love that my dad had and he was this loving being. And absolutely, I agree with that 100%. I just didn't always feel it, but 100% I would agree with that assessment of him. And I made I had this awareness that the way that he chose to love his children from that point on was to distance himself because he didn't know how to stop the yelling. And, I'm truly blessed to have been born when I was born, to fall into this coaching industry when I fell into it, because I've been able to stop the yelling.
Yeah, you changed a generation, because your son, Xander, if I can say his name, is that okay? Because I know you have him on social media.
I talk about him all the time.
I know, I usually don't do that. But when I follow you on social media and I watch your relationship with your son, who you really have, he's a storyteller, like, hey, like, I don't know if he's going to be a stand-up comedian, a storyteller, a movie producer. I don't know. He's going to be something, because his stuff he says is just freaking hysterical. So follow Alicia, find her on social media everywhere. But through you, because I've seen your story and I can see the change in what he recognized in you. You changed generations, man. Because he noticed something with you. So we've got, 30 minutes goes by long. I want you to make sure that you share, because it involves coffee. No, I'm just kidding. So something happened between you and your son that was a little bit of a wake-up call to the behavior, not how other ways that you related or look like your dad, but a behavior. So tell everybody what happened there.
Yeah, so I call these the silent cycles. I think there's actually a term for it, but I named it the silent cycles. These are the things like we are aware that our parent's an alcoholic. We're aware that our parents abuse us physically and emotionally. We're aware of those things, and a lot of those things are maybe not easy, but they are, because we're aware of them, we can stop them.
Yeah.
Right? They're in your face. You can, if you start drinking and you start feeling like an alcoholic, you know it, right? Because you're aware that your mom or dad was an alcoholic. Right. I'm assuming my parents were alcoholics. But the silent cycles are the things that your parents do that you repeat that you don't realize. So obviously my grandpa was a yeller. My dad realized it. And the only way he knew how to not yell was, or at his children anyway, because this story involves yelling.
Right.
But the way he dealt with it was to disconnect, because he didn't know any other way. My son was 4 years old, and he's always been very inquisitive, as most children are born. And the other day I actually told him, I said, Xander, don't ever stop asking questions.
I hope not.
And without a hesitation, he goes, why? Like, I love you so much. Anyway, so I spilled coffee on myself in the car.
And this was when he was 4. So
he's 4 years old.
That's very important in the story. Yes.
Yeah, he's 4 years old. I spilled coffee on myself, and I said, dang it. It's so funny because I don't even do that. I don't say that anymore anyway. But the next day, I think I spilled water on myself. And again, dang it. Right. The third day in a row, because I'm super coordinated, I spilled something on myself again. And after my third dang it, my son says, why do you get mad when you spill stuff on yourself? And the only answer I had available was, I don't know, because my dad did. Isn't
that amazing?
And, he used to pound on the steering wheel or on his desk. And you knew when he was mad, because you'd hear a thump and a dang it. But as time went on, like, it wasn't really something that I worked on, but I had this awareness of doing it. And the most recent time that I spilled water on myself in the car, because I'm not any more coordinated, it was like and Xander's in the car. What happened? And I said, I spilled something on myself. And I was like, what? I didn't say dang it. I didn't get mad. It was just a moment. Is this the first time I've told you this story?
I didn't know about the fourth time where you had the kind of it. It didn't impact me
this
like
was in the last 6 months. Yeah.
yeah. Whoa, the silent, like, oh my gosh, I'm like spinning all through my own family tree as we talk. You guys out there listening, listen. Not only is that profound, call to action today, everybody, because like with even the banging and the yelling of the wheel, I always feel when somebody yells around me or somebody is, I immediately judge does that behavior equal what just happened? You know, like road rage. I'm just like, I can go to the place of like, seriously, slow your ass down, look at a tree, have a good day. Who cares that he cut you off? Like, I can just go there. But when somebody reacts that way, it always makes me feel like now you're in my space mistreating me because, like, why are you doing that around me? Like, it affects me so much. I don't know where that came from. You know,
I have a theory.
Okay, because you connected pretty quickly, and I want people to kind of just think about this weekend.
Yeah, because I believe that there's a priority. Like there's a thought that goes through your head of you almost hurt me, you almost hurt my car, you almost hurt my child in the back seat. Like there's an offense to my priorities. And so the reaction is however you react to that. You know, and if I'm a mama bear. Like if you almost injure my child, I'm coming after you.
Yes.
You know? That's calmed down too. I've like really been like, okay, am I overreacting on this? Like,
right.
Can you tell me? But that's my theory of the road rage is, you know, if you don't care about your car and somebody almost makes you wreck it, you're not going to get mad. If you care about your life, you might, but yeah.
You guys take a peek at this. I just had to put it up there. You know, I'm half blind sometimes, so I can't even see if I'm spelling it correctly. So you'll see me like in this comment section, but this is what Alicia just said. That's pretty profound. I think if we all sit back this weekend just for a few hot minutes and just think about something that, you know, whatever you're getting angry about or whatever, if you can just sit back in it and just figure out how did I feel invaded? Like what just happened? Especially when it's not happening to you. Like it's an observation. Like that's like so profound. And people have to read the book. It's just the way that it is. You have to go out and get the book, or you can, let's have Alicia share her contact information because she has a beautiful autograph. Like it's like, so I'm sure she'd sign a book for you and send it your way.
It my whole life.
Of course you did. Till 3 a.m., people, to hand to her boyfriend, to put on the cover of her books. Tell everybody how they can find you and reach out to you.
So the easiest way to find me is alicialyons.com. It has a coaching tab to work with me. It has my books, which includes the Fourfold Formula. And my name is spelled a little special because my mom swears she didn't know there was any other way to spell Alicia. There's like 80 ways of spelling Alicia.
But you're so special.
But I was born in 82 and the internet didn't exist. So
there you go. She would have had to read a book to see the girl names.
I was named after her best friend, who I've met twice in my life.
Well, she was special to her. Hopefully there was some trait that's good.
Yeah. So it's ALYSIALYONS.com. My podcast, my blog, my books, and my work with me tab. So yeah.
I keep having all the authors on here. I think you're a really good example, honestly, of someone who, everybody's a storyteller and you've trudged the path by yourself. And so there are definitely people out there that have done it. And now you've played with a multi-author book, which can often be another experience, you know, in itself, just the relationship building and getting to know other people. And it's not just about trees. Like we all wrote a story about trees, which can be very left brain, black and white. This is my experience with a tree. This is some deep stuff. And so you guys can connect with this. And so And then Alicia takes it to another level, being a mom and self-awareness and self-improvement. And then that's what we coaches do, is that we really, really have a sincerity to help others discover themselves, be, smarter, stronger, braver than they believe. And I believe in Alicia and reach out to her, and she's moving forward into book 2. She's moving into the trilogy, the All Things Wellness trilogy. So the next book is Win the Wellness War Mini Battles. You can catch it out there on my website at allthingswellness.com/author tab. We are done. Episode 8. Alicia, now it is 7:30 your time. Do not go back to bed.
No, right. It was funny. I told my boyfriend I was going to wake up at I had a podcast at 7. Yeah. And he goes, well, wake me up after. He goes, how long is it? I was like, probably about 30 minutes. He goes, okay, watch some TV.
Or do a 2-hour podcast and don't wake me up until noon. 3.
Yeah, I don't, awesome. To me, I don't wake people up. I don't wake my son up. I don't wake, like, not everybody's a sleeping bear, but I grew up with don't wake the sleeping bear. Yeah. And my mom always said, don't ever wake a sleeping child. And I've lived by that rule. Yeah, I don't wake people up. I like the morning time. Like, the reason I wake up at 6 a.m. is everybody else in the family, like, if they could sleep till noon, they would. But I like the time for myself where I don't have to take care of anyone. And I realized the other day that I get so pissed off at the cats for meowing at me when I wake up, because I'm awake not to feed you, but to
You're interrupting your priorities.
Right? They're offending my priorities.
You just said it, Dan. Cheers. Till next time, Alicia. Thanks for joining us this Saturday morning, you guys. The Fourfold Formula is out on Amazon, and we'll talk to you in the next episode. See you soon.